Hello everyone and welcome to my new video of how to make your own Discord bot in Python. So let's get started. So guys, in today's video we'll be continuing our warn command set, and in the warn command set we'll be creating commands like delete warn, show all the warns, emphasizing our basic warn command, and we'll be creating other functions like to delete the warn after 30 days or so. You can obviously change that. So let's try to get into it. So first of all, we'll be making some changes in our warn command. So what we'll do is we'll check for the hierarchy as well. So what I mean exactly is, let's say a moderator warning the owner. So this is not really a right practice. So in order to check for this, what we'll see is we'll check for the roles. So what I'm gonna do is I'm simply gonna create one if statement. So before this warn entry thing, I'll just create one if statement and I'll say if my ctx.author.toprole.position. So it will just get the position, and we need to make sure that this position is like, I'll just provide not rather. So if not, my ctx.author.toprole.position is not more than my member.toprole.position. So if this is not true, then we'll just return await ctx.send. Yeah, we're just gonna say you can't warn a higher up or a member with same hierarchy. So this is pretty much obvious that we won't be able to warn a person with the same hierarchy level or higher. So yeah, that's okay. Now we need to create one function to check for all the warns. So I'll just define commands.command, and we can have aliases for this. Aliases can be like warn logs, something like that. I'll just define async def warns. It will have a self parameter, ctx parameter, my member object, like whose warns do we want to see, and it will be a discard.member, and its default value will be none. And I don't think we require any permission to check the warns of a specific user. Basically, if not member. So basically, if not member means that the member object is none and the user haven't provided a member. So my member will be equal to my ctx.author. Okay, so this is really basic stuff, to be honest. I'll just get the warn logs. So I'll say warns is equal to await myself dot warn logs. So I'll pass my ctx.guild.id, then my member.id. So basically we should probably rename this as data. So this is basically the data of the user. Now there is an exception. What will happen is, let's say you warned a person, but now you are deleting its warn. Now for the time being, what will happen is the warn will be deleted, including the time, but the value of data will not be a none type object. Basically it will have some values, but the value of warns and time will be none type. So for that, what we need to check is we need to check if not data or not my data, and we need to pass 3, or you can even pass 2, because at the same time the value of my times and warns will be equal. If either of them is none, we'll just return await ctx.send. This user has no warns. Now we'll just create an embed, which will be discard.embed obviously, and it will have title, and the title will be equal to my warns of, we'll provide the id rather than the name. So I'll say member.id, and I'll make it an f string, obviously warns of member.id, and it will have a description. So description will be the number of warns the user have. So let's add some description. Description should be something like total warns, and we know that the total warns would be equal to the length of my data, and we can either provide 2 or 3. Both of them will be same, and we just need to get the length of that. So basically the length of them would be same, they would be basically different, and the color would be something like, you can either provide red, or maybe you can provide member.color. I'll just set the thumbnail. So I'll say set thumbnail. It's miscellaneous things, you may or may not do this. So I'll say member.avatar URL. Okay, now we need to loop through this data. So what I'll say is, I'll say for I in my range, so I am looping through the number of my warns. So I'm just simply gonna copy it. So I'll just loop through them. So now I'll get the corresponding reason and my time at which the person was born. So I'll just get the timestamp. So my timestamp would be data, my second index, because that's where my warns are saved, and then I'll get the index of my specific one, which will be my ith index, as you can see, for I in range. So I have the timestamp. Now I need to get the data in the datetime object, so I'll just say datetime. Basically I'll give it a space, datetime, the datetime dot from timestamp, and I have the timestamp right here, and I am gonna get strf time. So in this I'll have to provide the formatting, and I'll provide the small c. I have all the tags. There's a whole bunch of documentation for it, you can read that. And I'll have the reasons. It's going to be data, my second. So basically the timestamp is going to be third, because the times are stored in my third index, and my reason is stored in my second index, and I'm going to pass my first, which is my I, which is the loop which we are looping through. Now I'll say embed.add field. The name will be my on. Basically I'm gonna make it an f string, and I'm gonna say on, and I'm gonna provide the date, so it will be my timestamp, and its value will be, firstly it will be a reason, so reason will be my corresponding reason, and I'll leave a line and I'll pass the WAN ID. So what is WAN ID basically? So WAN ID is the corresponding ID provided to a WAN, so that when we need to delete that WAN, we can just use that WAN ID. I'm trying to make the code as shorter as possible. So for the WAN ID, I'm gonna pass my timestamp. So basically not the timestamp, but rather the decimal for the timestamp. Like this is my datetime.datetime object. I'm simply gonna get this. So this will be my WAN ID. So we need to copy this in order to delete the WAN. So this is a bit lengthy. You can decode and encode it to make it shorter and more sensible, but yeah, I'm gonna make the video as precise as possible. So simply then we're gonna set a footer. So footer would be something like, so I'm simply gonna say WANs clear after every month. So this is pretty much obvious. We'll be working on this. Now I'll say await ctx.send, my embed is equal to embed. So let's try this function now. I'll just save. Let's hope there are no errors, because yeah, I am too hasty when it comes to such things. So I'm simply gonna warn 2 or 3 peeps. So I'm just gonna say warn maybe textstruct, which is a bot, to be honest. Okay, so textstruct is warn. Now let me warn textstruct again for no reason, and yeah, it's again warn. Now I'm simply gonna check the warns of textstruct. So I'm simply gonna say textstruct, and as you can see, we have got 2 warns. So there's one issue, like the formatting is not just fine. So what we can do is we can just simply, firstly we need to make sure that it's inline false, else it looks cringe, to be honest. So it's inline false, then we need to provide this in code brackets. Yeah. So now let's create a delete one function. So before the delete one function, I need you guys to see this. So for the warn entry command, I have changed it a bit. So why I've changed it like that? So I have made if not warns. So even though we had if data is equal to empty square brackets, then we were doing this, but now we are also checking if not warns. So I've amended this code because there are chances that the data exists but the warns value is none, so it will show an error. I have tried this, that's why I'm saying, so you just need to make amends to your warn entry command. So make sure of that you do the changes accordingly. Now we need to create one function for deleting the specific warn as well. So I'll say remove warn or delete warn. You can just name it anything. So I'll make it self, then I'll pass my guild ID, my member ID, and then my index. So what is this index here? So basically through the index we'll be checking which index of the warn or the time is being deleted. Like let's say the second index of my time is being deleted, then I need to delete the corresponding second index of my warns. So first of all we need to get the data. So data will be, obviously I'll call my other function, which will be await cell.warnlog of my guild ID and my member ID. So basically I'm just getting the data of the corresponding parameters. Now I have the data and I just need to say await cell.bot.db.execute. Now before this, what I'll check is I'll check if the length of my data, so basically if the length of my data of my second or third index is more than 1. So it should be more than 1. If it's more than 1, then we are just simply gonna say execute, and I'll say update my warn logs, set my warns is equal to $1, times is equal to $2, where my guild ID is equal to $3, and member ID is equal to $4. So yeah, now I just need to pass the values. So what I'll do with the values, so why I'm doing this more than one, because if the value of my bonds is 1, then we'll just simply delete the row, because there's no point of keeping the row if it was the last one. So I'll just make it my data. One is my second index dot remove. I'll just remove an item which will be my data second index, and I'll get the specific index which is my index. As you can see, that's what the parameter was for. So I'll just copy it and I'll paste it right over, and this will be my third index and third index. The third index is for my times, as you can see. Now I'll pass my guild ID, then my member ID. Now this was when the length of my bonds was more than 1. If it's less than 1, so I'll make it return, like it should be returned. Now if the length of my bonds is less than or equal to 1, then what I'll do is I'll just delete the row. So I'll say cell.db bot.db.execute delete from bond logs, where my guild ID is equal to $1 and member ID is equal to $2. Yeah, so I'll just pass my guild ID and member ID. So means the data is cleared and we just need to do that, create the delete one function. So it will be a commands.command. We'll have an aliases for this, which will be wv, which stands for delete one, and we'll make itself ctx, then our member object, like which members one do you want to delete. So it will be the member, which is discard.member, and we'll have the one ID. So basically this one ID is the timestamp we are seeing right here. So we need to get the one data again. So this, we can also name it data like we did in the last function. So I'll just name it data rather. So data will be my await cell dot bond log, and I need to get the bond log of the specific person, which will be my ctx dot guild dot id, then my member dot id. We have the bond log, and if not, data. So basically, if you see in my bond log function that if data is not there, it will return us a list, empty list, if you see. So we'll say if data is equal to an empty list, then we'll just return, we'll just say this user has no bonds. Pretty much straightforward. If my specific one ID, so basically one ID will be a float, not to mention that, so I forgot to mention that it should be a float. We are type hinting in the parameters as well. So type hinting, if you don't know that, type hinting is just, specifying the type of my parameter. This is basically, I'm just suggesting that the type of one ID should be a float. Now what I'll do is I'll just simply say if my data 3, basically we can set it 2 as well, and so if my data 2 means that this is not an untype object, we need to make sure of that, and we need to check if my one ID is in my data 3. So basically one ID will be my timestamp, so which is in my times section, which is third index. So if that is the case, then we'll do something. I'll pass it for now, else I'll just return await ctx.send. You will just say no one entry with the corresponding user found, negative square cross mark. So basically this is an emote. You can just get the emote, like if I show it you, like I can just say white check mark. This is my white check mark. We can use this, we can just copy it and paste it right here. I'll just comment it. So this is my emote of white check mark, and we can get the square negative, and I can just copy it, and here is my other. So I've just placed negative square cross mark. We'll be using negative white check mark as well. Now we need to check the index of my one. So basically I have the one ID. Now I need to check the index, then we'll call the delete one function. So I'll say my index is equal to my data 3 dot index. So basically we can make it data 3 only, so that you will have convenience in understanding the code. And then I'll pass my one ID. So since it is in my data, then I'll just pass my index or my one ID, and that is all. So basically I have my index, and now I'll say await myself dot remove one, and I'll have to pass my ctx.guild.id, member.id. okay, it is ID. Then I'll pass my index, which is my index variable. Okay, so it looks fine. Now I'll just say return await cdx.send. Now I'll just say one entry deleted by check mark. This is again the emote, so I'll remove the emotes now. I guess this function should pretty much work. Now let's try running it and hope for literally no errors. Yeah, I always say that because I never trust myself. So I'll just check the wants of my text struct bot, which is what it is. So here we have the one id. I'll try to delete this id, and I'll say one basically delete one, which is the aliases, my text struct, and then I'll provide the one id. Yes. Okay, we got an error. Okay, so I misspelled one logs. Oh, how can I be doing this? So yeah, we just need to change it. So I'll just move on to here, and as you can see, I spelled it wrong. It was one logs. I'll copy this, paste it. Okay, the bot is running. Let's see. Let's hope for no errors. Yeah, it says one entry deleted. Now let me check the ones of text struct again. Okay, so basically it deleted the ones 2 times, I guess. Okay, so I guess this was to be more than or equal. I'm gonna make it more clear by just removing this from here, and obviously not the comma. Now I'll say my wants is equal to this, which is my data to remove my data to index, and my times is equal to just this, like here, wants and my times. Okay, so let's want text struct bot like 2 times, I guess, and then I'm gonna check the wants of text struct. I got the wants. Now I'm gonna delete the one. Let's say we delete this one, and let's check the wants of text struct again, and here we go. As you can see, it's working. So what the problem was, there was just a little small problem. You just have to say data to remove, and you'll have to provide the values. Like this was, I just defined it as a variable, and it doesn't really returns anything, so it was a non-type object. So that's all the error was. So you can just copy this, and that's all it requires. Now let's work on deleting the wants after 30 days. So what we'll be doing is we'll be calling one onEvent function, which will be called after every 24 hours. So I'm just gonna say @tasks. So basically you have to import the tasks. So I'll say from discord.txt import commands, and I have imported tasks as well. So it will be a loop, and I'll call it in every, like we have a parameter for hours, and I'll call it in every 24 hours. It will be an async function, and it will be clean wants. So it will just clean the wants. Now what we'll be doing is we'll get the current time firstly. So current time will be my date time. So yeah, you need to import date time as well. Make sure of that. Datetime.datetime.now. So this is the current time. Now we'll get all of the data. So we'll just say await cell.bot.db.fetch, and I'm going to say select, basically in double inverted, select asterisk from one logs. So I'm basically getting everything from my one logs. So for row in my data, so basically my data will have rows. Now what we'll check is we'll clean up the data. So we need to check if there is a row and the wants or the times in that row is none type, then we will just delete that row because we don't need it. There is no use of it, and it will only cause errors in your terminal and nothing else. So we'll check if not, basically my row third index, so third or second, you can make it any, and what we'll do is we'll just say await cell.bot.db.execute, and we'll say delete from one logs where my guild id is equal to $1 and member id is equal to $2, and I'll just pass my basically this my row 0th index and then my row 1 index. So yeah, so we'll be deleting the row and we'll just continue through the loop. And if the row exists, then what we'll do is we'll check in each of the tables. So this is going to be a heavy task. So we're going to check in each of the column and each of the wants if those wants are expired or not. So I'm going to say for time in my row 3, which is third index, which is my time, I'm going to get the timestamp, basically my date time object. It will be for my date time dot date time dot from timestamp, and I'm gonna pass the float, which is my time. I'll just get the division, so I'll make it a difference. Difference will be the current time, which is my current minus my timestamp. So yeah, now we have the delta time object. This will be a delta time object which will show how many days have been there. So I'll say if my difference dot days dot day is more than or equal to 30, then we just want to delete that. Now we'll just get the index. So index will be my row 3 dot index, and I'll have to pass the time object, which is my basically the time. So we are getting the specific index. Now we're checking if the time is going to be empty, like the list is going to be empty. If the list is going to be empty, we're going to delete it. So I'm just going to say if my length of my row 3 is more than or equal to more than or equal to 1, basically more than will be fine, I guess. So it should be just more than. So if it's more than 1, then we'll just delete it. So I'll say await self dot, basically I'm simply going to copy this. It looks fine. And in the else statement, I'll just say await self dot bot dot db dot execute. I'm just doing the same stuff I did in the other code, so I'm not writing everything again. I just copied it, and I'll remove the objects from it. So I'm just simply going to say row 2 dot remove. So it's a list, so I'm gonna remove it, my row 2, and I'll pass my index. So I'm removing that specific item. Now I'm gonna copy paste, make it 3, yeah, and I'm simply gonna pass my row 2 then my row 3. Okay, so there is a flaw. It should have been times is $2. So the times would be row 3 and it will be row 2, and I'll pass, and then my row 0. Okay, so this looks pretty much fine to me. Now we can maybe change the days to 0 days. So for now all the months have been 0 days, so it should delete all the rows. Now we just need to start this loop. So in our onEven function, basically on ready, I'll say await myself dot clean bonds dot start. So this is just gonna start the loop. If length dot row is equal to 1, if it's equal to 1, then we are gonna delete it, and if it's more than 1, then we are gonna update it. So yeah, I did a mistake there. So let's run it again. These are already runtime, so it will already delete it. And let's see, and as you can see, it's deleted. Yeah, it's deleted. Okay, so that's all for this video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, subscribe and share for more, and I'll see you guys in the next one.